What's up, everybody, and welcome to Reynolds Coliseum on the campus of North Carolina State University here in Raleigh, North Carolina, for this Women's National Collegiate Gymnastics Championships regional meet. Hi, I'm Darren Vaught, former NCAA gymnast, Rachel Garland along my side. Rachel, how cool is this? 6 great teams along with some individual specialists as well. A lot of great gymnasts, great teams here in the gym today.
Yeah, this is going to be an absolutely phenomenal meet. So in a regional competition, the top 18 teams nationally get seeded out. So we're guaranteed to have 3 of the top 18 teams. It just so happens that number 19 and number 20 are here today too. So out of the 6 teams, 5 in the top 20 today.
No doubt about it. Maybe the best regional as far as the rankings are concerned across the country. And just a reminder of the format here, of course, 6 teams as opposed to the normal 2 or 4 and 6 rotations as well. So with those individual event specialists sprinkled in, it's going to have a different look than your usual gymnastics meet.
Yeah, definitely. So normally the rotation is vault, bars, beam, floor, but because there are 6 teams, there will be 2 bye events where a team is actually just sitting out for rotation. Those will come after vault and after the balance beam. Outside of that, there's no exhibitions at all. The teams put up their top 6 athletes on each event. The top 5 scores count, and then we will see either an event specialist or an all-around specialist on each of those events as well.
Well, let's get to introducing the 6 teams. You see the rankings here. The number 2 LSU Tigers, who were in Raleigh a little bit earlier this season and brought a win back to Baton Rouge. Obviously one of the best teams in the country, but there you go. Just riddled this lineup here with great competitive gymnastics squads. 2 will come away to advance to the national semifinal, and that 2nd seed, I think, is up for grabs.
It really is. Between the number 11 Nebraska team and the number 20 NC State team, there's a 4/10, not even a 4/10 difference. That could be a fall. It could be a couple of stuck landings. So that number 2 spot of going to nationals is really anybody's game. Whereas in some of the other regions, it's almost a guaranteed your top 2 seeded teams are the ones that are going to go to nationals.
It should be very competitive all throughout the broadcast today. There, of course, Dee Bro leading the way for LSU in her 41st season at the helm. That number 2 spot, they hold the national ranking at the end of this regular season. That's where they've wound up each of the past 2 seasons, hoping to break through and make it to that ultimate NCAA championship this year.
And they've lost to the number 1 ranked team currently, Oklahoma. They're going to battle at nationals this year. I can almost guarantee that one. And I'm not sure anyone has been in their career longer than Dee. She's just done a fantastic job for these LSU Tigers.
And the LSU will start its first rotation on the floor exercise. So then Nebraska, the Cornhuskers, by the rankings, the 2nd-ranked team here in Raleigh this afternoon. And one of the top in the country, again, just a tremendous overall team.
Yeah, they're definitely a phenomenal team to watch. They come in, though, their RQS, that regional qualifying score, what all of these teams have been trying to get all season is this regional qualifying score that puts them in this position. Nebraska comes in almost a point behind LSU's regional qualifying score. So when we say it's up for grabs for that 2nd place finish, it truly is this afternoon.
A lot of experienced head coaches for these teams, too. You see Dan Kindig in his 25th season at the helm for the Cornhuskers.
And you can see there, Nebraska's made it to that NCAA championship 10 times under his reign. So about half the time. And it's going to be one of those things, if they don't make it today, it's definitely going to be a disappointment for the Nebraska team. But for any of the other viable options, it's going to be a huge win for all of those programs.
And then the Beavers of Oregon State will be next according to the rankings for this Raleigh regional, as Oregon State will get started in a bye. So they will not be present here in this first rotation, as it will look a little bit like this. Vault, Maryland, NC State over on the bars, Nebraska on the beam, and then LSU in the floor exercise.
And then, of course, we don't see GW as well, so George Washington also on a bye. We will see George Washington and Oregon State start their events on rotation 2.
LSU, tremendous in all events, but the floor exercise in particular, one of their best. They're second in the country behind only UCLA.
And all of those RQS scores are huge. Anything over a 49 is fantastic in women's gymnastics.
So getting started is LSU on the floor routine here.
They've got just about a minute and a half in their team touch, so getting kind of re-warmed up prior to the competition starting. The gymnasts, their meet actually started about 1 o'clock. So they came in, they got warmed up at 1 o'clock. Here it is 3 hours later that these girls have not actually been on the floor exercise.
Now for Maryland, that's Peterman first on the vault. As this first rotation, again, Maryland on the vault, LSU on the floor exercise, NC State at the bars, and Nebraska on the balance beam. As you saw,
again,
LSU.
There you see Morgan Lane, who's going to be one of the the all-around specialists. She'll actually be rotating with the LSU team.
North Carolina, a few of those individual competitors. Lane is one, Kaja Hislop is another. She's going to be participating in the vault, the beam, as well as the floor exercise. And then Michaela Robinson on the floor and Madison Nettles on the vault as well, representing the Tar Heels. And then Caitlin Headland, of course, on the the uneven bars, excuse me.
Yeah, and North Carolina just narrowly missed making this regional event as a team. So the top 36 teams in the country are the ones that actually get to make it as a team to the regional competition. And North Carolina, I think, was just outside that, finished at 37th or 38th, somewhere along those lines. So they have a lot of event specialists here.
You see Madison Nettles there getting warmed up on the vault for North Carolina. Cool to see individuals compete with teams in the rotations here. You saw there for Nettles some encouragement from the Maryland squad. So that's certainly something that's unique to these regional competitions.
We are actually getting started to hear the floor music in the background there for LSU. This is sophomore Ashlyn Kirby. So the judges are slowly starting to take control of all of their events. You've got Nicole Wild actually competing on bars for the Wolfpack. And Roby is on balance beam for Nebraska.
Kinsey Roby of the Cornhuskers. As now Kirby in her floor exercise.
There you see Wild getting some high fives from her teammates. Another one of the unique things about this meet is the teams have to stay in corral. So I know a lot of our broadcasts, like on the floor, on the uneven bars, the teams kind of make a tunnel almost around the event. At these regional and even moving on to national competitions, they have to stay kind of contained in a corral.
And that's particularly significant, I think, Rachel, for the floor exercise. Whereas on that far side of the floor, you don't see a line of teammates perhaps dancing along with the routine. If anything is going to mess with a gymnast's rhythm and the way that they prepare and perform in an exercise today, I think that might have the most significant impact.
Yeah, definitely. They'll still be dancing in their corrals, but it is a unique thing, whereas they've had 10 to 12 meets where they can stand on the sideline. So I know a lot of these teams actually practice being in corrals during their practices the weeks coming up to their conference and regional meets, just because those are how things operate. So even in practice, they'll have all the girls stand in one spot somewhere in the gym, and then they'll do one event at a time just to practice, give them a little bit of awareness of what's going to come at these meets.
So Ashlyn Kirby's floor exercise in the books for LSU. Her season high is a 9.925, and up next will be Christina Desiderio, who's topped out at a 9.875 so far this year. A lot of high scores individually and, of course, as a team for LSU. And back to the uneven bars.
And we'll slowly start to see the official scores come in down in the bottom right of your corner. We've got Drew Grantham getting ready to go for NC State on the uneven bars.
Looked as if it was a 9-7-5-0, the official score for Wild to lead things off for North Carolina State. As now Grantham, a great all-around competitor for North Carolina State.
I think this is the only event she wasn't part of the all-conference team on. Every other event, she was either first team or second team. I think bars the only one, but that was a great routine, a good way to get started, just that tiny little hop on the dismount.
The Durham, North Carolina native turns in a nice routine.
But again, those hops are going to be what add up. So there's a 4/10 difference separating the top, I guess the second through fifth ranked teams. And if they all take a step, then that's going to be 4 or 5 tenths here and there.
It's typically, we've seen it be the case with the meets that we have called. Those missteps at the end of a routine can make all the difference in the world, and especially with that narrow margin of error. Certainly today, they're going to be significant. So now Christina Desiderio to your right.
Epperson was on the beam for Nebraska, and this is, I believe, Kalia Burgess.
Burgess very excited about her routine there. On the vault, high fives all around. As Desiderio receives the same sort of ovation from the LSU crowd.
And you can see the scores, they're already pretty close, 9-7-5, 9-7-7-5. Maryland, before the running total flashed up, another 9-7-5. So the scores are going to be really tight here.
Desiderio, a freshman out of Hackettstown, New Jersey, looking to finish up her floor exercise for LSU. Second in line there, as it was a 9-7-7-5 for Ashlyn Kirby to get them started.
So a little bit low on that landing. Still a great routine, and I think LSU has a couple of tenths they can give here and there. They're the number 2 ranked team on floor, so that should be okay.
Yeah, and as we were saying, according to the RQS scores, they've got a pretty wide margin between them and everyone else, but then is when it gets jumbled up.
So there you can see Maryland on vault, just that large step backwards, and that's really what makes the difference between all of these teams, is who can find the landing and who can't. Just like that.
Maggie Tamburo finishing up the routine, sticking the landing for North Carolina State. Gets a big roar out of the Wolfpack.
Definitely, those landings are huge. It's the last thing that the judges see, and when you have 6 girls up, 5 count, if they all take a step and you get 5 tenths off of your team total, that's really going to determine who comes in that second place spot here.
Now back to the beam for Nebraska.
This should be Megan Schweihofer.
Is in fact Schweihofer. This will be followed by Taylor Houchin. A lot of great individual gymnasts on this Nebraska team. A number of ladies being named All-Americans. Schweihofer, one of them. You see Desiderio with the 9-8 even on the floor for LSU. Schweihofer gets that full turn in.
All of them. They all have to do it, and it's awful.
As you've told us before, Rachel, maybe the most dreaded portion of the routine, even though it's one of the most practiced.
It's one of the most practiced. They've been doing it since most of them were 6 or 7 years old. But, it's the little things that you end up making the mistakes on.
So the Terrapins pretty excited for her finish.
There you see Caitlin Fillard getting ready to start her uneven bar routine. A 9-8 out of Maggie Tamburo for the Wolfpack. And this is Lexi Priestman for LSU on the floor exercise.
So she's the third of their 6 competitors in this event. Priestman, a junior, 2-year letter winner out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And they're Fallard with an impressive routine on the uneven
great
bars.
routine. Again, just that tiny little hop, maybe a half-tenth on that one, but still not quite the stuck landing that they need.
Fallard, another one of those great all-around gymnasts for North Carolina State. As you see Priestman finish up.
And again, just a little bit short on that landing, so it looks like LSU may be playing it a little bit safe. Kind of unique that floor is their first event, but I know when they found out their rotations, they actually started practicing that way at just their training facility. So they'd come in and they start on floor first. But the last couple gymnasts have landed those last passes a little bit short, a little bit awkward for LSU.
Nebraska on the beam. As Schweihofer's score is in, you saw there.
It should be Carrie Hochin.
Now this is Taylor Houchin.
Taylor.
Houchin, a sophomore out of Missouri. And a lot of Nebraska fans, as there are for every team here in Raleigh, but Nebraska, unique in that last season, they actually led the country in home attendance at their gymnastics meets.
It's hard to distinguish where some of the teams are in the audience just because there's a lot of red and black. You've got Nebraska, you've got NC State, and you've got Maryland, all with red and black.
So depending on who is finishing up a routine and when, maybe that's when we need to start looking around.
Definitely. This is Lauren Kent for the Wolfpack on the uneven bars.
Kent a little wide set with the landing, but she follows up Fallard's 9.775.
And Kennedy Edney on floor for LSU. One of their top performers.
It's certainly a very personalized routine. I remember from the last time they were in Raleigh, Edney.
She's always great to watch.
A lot of personality in her floor exercise routine, and maybe because of the corral situation, they're not as able to do so. But remember, last time LSU's team was in Raleigh, they would reward an effort or performance with, they've got a little plastic crown.
They have a crown.
And they would crown each competitor after their stuck landing or what have you.
I wonder if it's here. We'll have to pay attention
I
to
haven't
the corral
seen it today, but of course they're in a little bit more of a concentrated area, not as much space today.
And vault is already done. We saw a teeny tiny glimpse of Madison Nettles out of UNC for the Tar Heels.
Houchin finishing up on the beam to your left.
Just those little teeny landings for LSU.
Of course, they've got a larger margin of error than any other team here, but those add up quickly.
They really do.
Now Chelsea Knight looking to finish things off on the uneven bars for North Carolina State. She's had really just a tremendous season for the Wolfpack as Houchin continues her work on the beam on your left side of your screen.
Yeah, Knight's been, again, the anchor on every event all season long. And if NC State does not make nationals as a team, Chelsea Knight has a phenomenal shot to make it to nationals as an individual all-around competitor, which would just be fantastic for her as this is her senior year.
A little misstep backward on her landing on the bars there. As that rounds out the uneven bar portion of today for North Carolina State.
Again, this is Breen up for Nebraska, their 5th competitor, so we've still got one more for Nebraska, and then we do have one of the all-around specialists still to come.
Danielle Breen, another All-American. And they're fired up for her.
That was a great routine. Sarah Finnegan getting ready to go for the Tigers on floor. Career high, season high, perfect 10. Maybe we'll see another one.
So one left to go on the beam for Nebraska. That'll be Grace Williams. And you mentioned Finnegan now at the floor exercise for LSU. Otherwise, uneven bars and vault competition all wrapped up here in the first rotation.
Finnegan, one of 3 all-arounders for the Tigers. Absolutely huge release move out of Tyra McKellar for Towson on the uneven bars there.
And Finnegan here on the floor exercise, one of the top all-around performers in the country. She's ranked 4th.
Behind 3 former Olympians.
Of course, and then her teammate Maya Hambrick, who we'll also see for LSU today. Not far behind, ranked 7th individually in the country. They're loaded. Now Grace Williams there on the ball, on the beam rather, on your right, finishing things up for Nebraska. Slight hobble, kept her balance though.
Great job out of Sarah Finnegan. I'm not sure if that's going to be the perfect 10. Her first tumbling pass to me was a little bit off. Other than that, it was pretty clean. So I'm going to go 9.9, maybe even a 9.95.
And of course, her season high, she and Maya Hambrick both had perfect 10s in the floor exercise.
I would like to see one.
That would be,
I'm
that would be something to see, right?
I really want to see a perfect 10. These meets, these regional competitions and the NCAA national competition, this is as close as you're going to get to the Olympics without having to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to actually go to the Olympics. So we've got a 9.95 out of Sarah Finnegan for LSU. So again, Maya, a chance to get a 10. I'd really like to see one.
And you saw a glimpse of what I was describing earlier, that Nebraska crowd. They started a Go Big Red chant. Now, of course, as you mentioned, that could be referring to a number of teams.
It could be. Maryland could think it was them. NCAA, it could go for everybody.
If the
Just
Go
pump
Big
everybody.
Red chant itself wasn't so patently Nebraska,
yes,
then it could be more confusing. You're right.
So we've got one event specialist on the balance beam, Katie Waldman. And then after Maya, we've got one event specialist on the floor exercise.
So Maya Hambrick rounding things out for LSU. We mentioned with her teammate Sarah Finnegan, who just went one of the top performers in the country, both in all-around and the floor exercise. As an all-around gymnast, Maya's season high of 39.725. That's good for 3rd on the team, Rachel.
Which is, it's just mind-boggling to me. When you're only capable of 40 total points and you're down by .275, that's just crazy. Again, this is the closest you're going to come to perfection. At the Olympics, you can't even get a perfect 10 anymore because their scoring system's all crazy. So if you want to see the perfect 10s, NCAAs is where you're going to get it. And again, those landings for LSU, I'm just a little bit shocked by them. So not a perfect 10. Again, probably a 9.9, 9.95. That's about the only thing I saw wrong in that entire routine.
Otherwise well executed. And by this point in the season, with gymnasts that have delivered this consistently in certain events, it's almost muscle memory to a degree.
Definitely, and there you see everyone getting the high fives from their respective teams. So the team competition is done for round 1. We still have Morgan Lane as an individual event specialist, who again, Morgan I think has a really great shot at making it as an individual to the national event. So the way the individual all-around specialists work, when the meet is over and all of the final scores come in, you have a handful of all-around specialists. You've got 2 teams that make it to NCAA Nationals. Now the 2 top all-arounders that are not already on a going team to Nationals will also make it. So if Morgan Lane comes in, say 4th overall and as an all-around competitor, but numbers 1 through 3 are all on LSU's team and LSU's going as a team, then Morgan could make it as an event or as an individual all-around finalist.
Of the Tar Heels, one of 4 individual event specialists or individual competitors here for North Carolina today. You mentioned Morgan competing as an all-around gymnast. Her season high in the all-around category, 39.550. So she's capable of really good performances.
And she's literally the only one competing right now, so all eyes are on Morgan Lane.
Well, we've described the floor exercise as sort of that anyway in a lot of cases. It's the one that draws the most attention. But now you've got 6 teams in here who are all done for the first rotation.
Yeah, and the thing is Morgan probably has no idea that everybody is done.
And you see Nebraska's final on the balance beam, 49.375. That actually is a season high, just barely beating their previous season high by half a 100th. So it was a 49.325 prior to that.
And again, I mentioned that 49 is really what kind of every team is striving for. So you can see Nebraska just narrowly margins above LSU currently, but that can all change anytime. And then you've got Maryland and NC State just barely behind that, right under that 49 mark. Quarter of attempt separates those 2 teams.
And just as a viewer, a reminder to keep in mind that the scores, as we get closer and closer to the end of this meet, could get more and more misleading because of teams with byes.
Definitely. So right now, technically, Oregon State and George Washington have a 0.
Correct.
So
but that doesn't mean that they're going to finish 50 points behind everyone else. Right. So Lane, again, something really cool that you get with these meets. Morgan Lane getting high fives all around from the LSU Tigers team. Very cool to see. So there you are, the finals for the team scores in rotation 1. As our first rotation is through here at the NCAA Regionals for Women's Gymnastics at Reynolds Coliseum. Stay with us. We'll be right back for rotation 2 in just a bit on ESPN 3. Back with you here on ESPN 3, the Women's National Collegiate Gymnastics Championships. This is the Raleigh Regional at Reynolds Coliseum on the campus of NC State University. 1 rotation in the books, and here's what will happen in rotation number 2. LSU moves over to the vault, and we see George Washington and Oregon State for the first time today. GW on the bars, the floor routine for the Beavers of Oregon State, and on the balance beam it'll be the hosting Wolfpack.
Yeah, and you can see there, so between LSU on the vault and Oregon on the floor, one ranked 5th, one ranked 7th, and their RQS is .02 apart. So really Oregon State has a chance to come in here, and even though Nebraska's currently in the first spot, LSU in the second spot, Oregon State's going to come in and say, nope, here we are, let's do this thing.
Certainly an opportunity for them to gain some ground in this. As we mentioned in the open, this competition is LSU, but according to their RQS, should be one of the top 2 seeds that gets to go to the national semifinal following this. But otherwise, it's up for grabs between teams numbers 2 through 5.
Yeah, 2 through 5. Their rankings are just too close to really be able to call that second place spot.
So
We've got rotation 2 underway. So Alexis Buechler on the balance beam for NC State. Sarah Finnegan leading off for LSU there on vault. And this is Mary Jacobson making her debut on the floor exercise.
And as we mentioned in rotation number 1, we'll try to get you as much of the vault routine as we can, but it does go by a bit quicker. So chances are we won't see a ton of LSU in this rotation, comparatively speaking.
And there again in the bottom right, you've got the running totals. George Washington at a 0 currently, just because nobody's competed yet. And Oregon State also at a 0 because they're finishing up their first competitor. Sarah Finnegan looked like a 9.85 on the vault. And Alexis Buechler finishing up for the Wolfpack, just a teeny tiny hop on that one.
And the balance beam, an event that has sort of plagued North Carolina State most of the season. They've done well, but if anything could be pointed out as being an Achilles heel for them, I think it would be the beam in most cases.
Definitely. They've gotten some great team scores when they all hit, but they've also gotten some really rough scores when too many people miss. And right there you saw a miss by LSU out of Sarah Edwards. So she went for a Yurchenko full and a half. Didn't have quite the right rotation and ended up sitting that one down. So again, not a detriment to LSU. They've still got 4 competitors. As long as those 4 hit their vault, essentially, whether it's a step on the landing or a stuck landing, then they'll just throw out Sarah Edwards' score.
And
it'll be like she never happened.
You saw Mary Jacobson finish up for Oregon State to lead things off on the floor exercise. Jacobson, a junior.
And then we saw Hannah Cohen getting ready to go for George Washington. And for LSU, this is Ruby Harold. So this is Hannah Cohen for the Colonials.
George Washington, overall the 19th ranked team in the country.
Just a hair ahead of NC State. And again, George Washington being in the same conference as NC State, this is probably the 2nd or 3rd time that they've already competed on this equipment in Reynolds this season. So this is a really, I don't want to say a home season or a home meet for them, but at least they're comfortable here.
It might be the next best thing, as you see Sarah Edwards' vault score comes in, as well as Filer's bar on the bars for George Washington. Now Drew Grantham on the balance beam for North Carolina State to follow up Alexis Buechler's performance, if you saw there, in 9.725.
NC State seems to be in that kind of mid 9.7 range. They really need to bump that up a notch, start getting some of those 9.8s, even closer to 9.9s, which they're really capable of. They may just be kind of holding a little bit back, a little bit too cautious so far.
And the first score in for Oregon State, a 9.825 for Jacobson to lead things off. Grantham lands after her routine on the balance beam. She had a great start on the uneven bars, did Grantham. And now for...
This is Sabrina Gill
for Oregon State. Sabrina Gill, correct, on the floor exercise.
And again, their first person up posts a 9.825. It's a great opening score. One thing that a lot of collegiate teams do is try to kind of stack the lineup so that the last girl always gets the highest score. So if they can start at a 9.825 and go up from there, that'd be phenomenal.
And you hear the roar of the crowd following the performance on the vault by Juliana Canamella.
A nice stuck landing on that Yurchenko full, only worth a 9.95, but again, after Sarah Edwards' fall, they just really need some good, strong scores.
Doing that routine, Canamella with a highest possible score of 9.95. Her season high is a 9.875. And of course, she'll be followed up by both Maya Hambrick and Kennedy Edney as the 2 anchors really in the vault for LSU. As you saw, she got the plastic crown, I saw, Rachel. So they're still keeping that tradition going.
They still have the crown. And then we've got Jillian Winstanley that just wrapped up her uneven bar routine.
Gill finishes up on the floor exercise for Oregon State. And now back to the balance beam.
This is Casey Nelson.
And Nelson
for the
of the
Wolfpack. One of the newer gymnasts to their lineup. She actually didn't start the season in lineup, kind of joined maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago, but has really made a great impact.
Nelson, just a freshman out of Marietta, Georgia.
And that roar from the crowd was for Maya Hambrick on vault for LSU. Yurchenko 1.5 with a stuck landing. I didn't see anything wrong with the vault, so I don't know where it's going to come, but it's worth a 10.
Her season high, a 9.950.
I'm going to go with that's got to be pretty close.
And LSU bringing each individual gymnast within the corral to receive the crown after their stuck landings. Hambrick that time gets it. And Nelson with a nice reception when she gets back to the NC State bunch. So Edney last in line on the vault for LSU, the second-ranked Tigers.
And she ties the career high 9.95 on that vault.
So a 9.95 for Hambrick. Season high for Edney, also a 9.95, so we'll see if she can match or better that. A 9.8 for Sabrina Gill on the floor routine. Here's Edney with the vault.
And another perfectly stuck landing.
She'll get a crown. She seems pretty excited about it, sprinting back to her team.
I mean, I would think that's got to go at least 9.95. We'll see what the judges saw. Again, our angle is a little bit different, so.
So a great run on the vault for LSU is now for Oregon State. Destiny Davis, the sophomore out of Woodland, Washington, makes her way to the floor routine. Hard to mistake her. She's got that light gray-white dye in her hair.
Matches the leotard. And then you've got Julia McLaughlin.
It is a good look.
It is. And Julia McLaughlin finishing up for George Washington on the uneven bars.
So GW excited about McLaughlin's finish.
This is Lauren Kent on the right side of your screen there for the Wolfpack. Davis
with, I believe, her final pass, finishing her routine. In fact, that is the case. A little bit of a side step on that last landing for Davis. One of those sneaky athletic moves to make it maybe look like it wasn't as much of a stumble.
Try to cover it up a little bit.
An impressive routine either way. And see on the far side of the floor, Morgan Lane of North Carolina competing all around as an individual today. Makes her run at the vault.
Kent, just a couple of little wobbles on this beam routine. After her acro series, had to take an extra step and just a little wobble on that right there. Other than that, it's a solid routine, but when you're trying to make it to the national event finals, you've got to be a little bit more than just average.
Have to be in order for either your score to count for your teams or to make it as an individual. Certainly coming out of what is a loaded regional here too. You've got to take that into consideration as well. We mentioned at the top of the show, 5 of the top 20 teams are here. That's not normally the case.
Yeah, definitely not. So again, the top 36 teams in the country make it. Only the top 18 are seeded out. So there are regions that have teams ranked 21st through 36th. And again, this one just got lucky that they've got 19 and 20 right on top of the top 18.
So Destiny Davis on the floor routine comes in with a 9.85. As now
you got McKenna Singley for Oregon State. And this is Cammie Druin-Allaire finishing up for George Washington.
Beautiful landing for Druin-Allaire.
I believe it's Druin-Allaire and then Winstanley are the 2 all-arounders for George Washington.
Singley here on the floor, a junior out of Bountiful, Utah. What a great name for a town.
Yes.
Bountiful, Utah.
It's actually kind of nice to have Oregon State and Nebraska here. So we've seen LSU. They came to an NC State meet. We've seen George Washington a number of times. We've obviously seen the team, or the girls from Carolina. But Oregon State and Nebraska, we haven't seen at all.
You're right. So, and in addition to the teams that have been here this season, the individual Eagle competitors have obviously played here for conference meets. It's cool to see a program like Nebraska, who we mentioned earlier, among the nation's leaders in home attendance, so they obviously have a great following. But here in Raleigh, North Carolina, you don't get to see that.
Right.
It's nice of them to bring a crowd.
And they traveled a long way.
They
Not
did.
as far as Oregon State, but they traveled a long way.
And they brought a crowd with them as Singley finishes up on the floor for Oregon State.
We've got 2 more on the uneven bars for George Washington. We've got 2 for NC State on balance beam and 2 on the floor exercise for the Beavers. And then we do still have either the event specialist or the all-around specialist.
So vault is wrapped up for the second rotation.
Kind of a unique dead spot where it just happened to be that all the routines ended at the same time. And it takes the judges, 30 seconds to a minute to actually calculate where things are at. The nice thing about collegiate gymnastics is you only have to add up a couple of tens, make sure they have their 10-0 start value, and subtract from there.
So Nicole Wild next up on the beam for North Carolina State.
This is Anna Warhol.
And Warhol wraps up on the uneven bars. Stuck landing. Emotions typically run high at these meets. It's not like they're not trying all season long, but with an NCAA regional and a chance at a national semifinal at stake, seems like the energy in here is amplified a little bit. Maybe of course that's sheer volume of teams, 6 teams as opposed to 2 or 4.
That's definitely part of it. But yeah, if you think about it, if you're a senior on one of these teams, this could potentially be the last meet of your career. So you're going to leave it all out on the line. So the energy is definitely up. Obviously, you want to make it to that national semifinal, but if you don't, you may as well make this the best of it.
Isis Lowry now on the floor exercise for Oregon State. Lowry, a sophomore out of Melbourne, Australia.
And then again, you've got Nicole Wild on the left side of your screen there for the Wolfpack.
Lowry, certainly a lot of personality and flair in this floor exercise routine as well. And somehow what I just said was an understatement. She proved me to be a little underspoken about just how individualized her routine is. See how she finishes up. Solid landing.
That was a phenomenal routine. And you can tell she's excited about it.
And a lot of fun to watch. Isis Lowry very excited and pleased with herself after that performance. Her teammates equally, if not more so.
This is Taylor White.
Of course, an individual competitor of William and Mary. And again, competing in the Eagle. Not her first time running through this routine here in Raleigh this season. And she, of course, competing with the George Washington team. A little better proximity for that one. That's kind of a cool match, a cool pair.
It is, definitely.
Mary and George Washington pretty closely.
Yeah, they're conference foes, but it's something like this. They're one team, so it's kind of nice. And the really cool thing about gymnastics is these teams really do welcome all of those event specialists. It's so hard to get out there and compete as an individual when the people next to you have a huge team behind them. So the teams do a really great job at just welcoming all of the individuals and giving them the support and the energy that they may need to get through their routines.
See Nicole Wild, a 9.825 as we now watch Chelsea Knight on the balance beam. Their anchor in every event. One of the top all-around competitors in the country, Caitlin Yanish, now on the floor exercise for Oregon State.
That was a huge double layout. So 2 flips, perfectly straight body. We've seen a couple of them, but none have landed like that.
It's a very ambitious first pass for her floor exercise. A lot of encouragement from the Oregon State corral, clapping along with the song. Knight's dismount. A clean landing.
It's so hard to pick with this split screen. Like, which one do you watch? You know. See, now it's easy because we've got floor. So.
Yanish, so far so good on the floor exercise. A slight step back with her right foot on the landing there. What'd you think of that routine?
That routine was great. A couple of little kind of, like you said, like a misstep here and there, but I mean, that's going to get a great score. So you see Oregon State already at a 49.1. As soon as Caitlin's score comes in, that's going to jump up to, you know, maybe even like a 49.3, somewhere around there.
Yanish, just a freshman this season, but she's done very well and progressed as the year has gone on for the Beavers. As she wraps things up for Oregon State on the floor exercise, and still a couple of individual specialists remaining in our second rotation.
On the balance beam, we'll have Kaja Hislop out of UNC, and then on floor,
it'll be Mary L. Arduino.
Yes.
Out of Towson, as we see her getting ready just in front of us here.
I believe she is an all-around specialist, so we'll see Marielle rotate with this Beaver team.
Hislop, another one of those with a great chance to move on with her individual routine. Had a tremendous year for the Tar Heels.
And she's an event specialist on 3 events, so you can tell she's always making a huge impact for that Tar Heel team.
As you see, that's Marielle at the beginning of her floor exercise. Tough fall there for Hislop.
Yeah, when she punched on that dismount, I think she was supposed to do a front full of some sort, or maybe a 1.5. She actually missed her foot a little bit on the side of that balance beam.
Seems to be okay as she was walked off by the coaching staff.
Hopefully she's okay. She's got
I think she's more upset with herself than anything.
That's definitely tough. It's not the way you ever want to finish anything, really. You kind of wish you could get up there and do it again, but.
And for someone in her situation, you know, thankfully, she has a couple more events that she's competing in today. It'd be different if it was your last go here in a regional setting in one event, and that's the one that went awry.
Right. So Marielle, the only one competing currently. There you see the Oregon State updated 9-9, so that does jump their team total up another 1/10.25.
Very smooth routine for Marielle there. Anxious to see what the scoring comes back there as she receives high fives from her new Oregon State friends.
You can see the running total. So NC State little over a point behind LSU right now. NC State, unfortunately, not having one of their better meets. They do have the ability to be in that 98 range after 2 rotations. They just haven't hit it yet. Their scores have been a little bit low. George Washington did okay on the bars. They're also capable of quite a bit more, normally coming in closer to that 49 mark. But Oregon State did exactly what they wanted to do coming into their first rotation, a 49.225. So if you look back to where everything was at after their first set of scores, LSU would still be in the second place, and then Nebraska in first place, just again after 1 rotation, if you take in all 6 teams.
So teams shuffle around from station to station. That'll do it for rotation number 2. Still 4 to go, as we've got a long day for you here at the Women's National Collegiate Gymnastics Championships. This is the Raleigh Regional on ESPN 3. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Women's National Collegiate Gymnastics Championships, the Raleigh Regional here on ESPN 3, Reynolds Coliseum in Raleigh, North Carolina. As Rachel, the first couple of rotations have been a lot of fun. I mean, we have many great gymnastics teams, gymnastics individual competitors here in the gym today.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch. So LSU coming in as the top-ranked team. A couple of little missteps. Some of their floor landings weren't the greatest. They moved to vault. They actually had 1 girl fall, but then they followed it up by about 4 stuck landings, which we'll see here, and just some absolutely phenomenal scores at 9.9 and 9.95s all around. So
yeah, those were Maya Hambrick and Kennedy Edney rounding things off on the vault routine. So they've cleaned up their sort of sluggish start pretty easily, as now you see George Washington trying to vie for that second spot and advance to the national semifinals, as is the Wolfpack of NC State.
Yeah, and we'll actually be able to have a better understanding of where all the teams are after this third rotation at kind of the midway point. We've got 2 teams that are on a bye right now, LSU and NC State. They've already competed 2 events, but we're still waiting for a lot of these teams to complete their actual second event. So everyone else kind of in this weird spot of their scores don't look as high just because they haven't actually competed on 2 events yet.
So now we move on to this third rotation, Rachel, where everyone is stuck with not their strongest event. You see the rankings there with the crew of teams that we have here in Raleigh today. 14th and 18th in an individual category, even 10th and 11th in a lot of cases is kind of lackluster compared to their usual performances.
Yeah, definitely. These teams, like you mentioned, they're phenomenal. This regional is just stacked with competitive athletes, and you can see those RQSs going into rotation 3. They're all within 0.2 of each other. So these teams are just all super competitive, and it's really anyone's game. George Washington not quite where they should be on the uneven bars on their first event, but moving into their balance beam, they've got a long way that they can come ahead.
No doubt about it, as Nebraska moves over to the floor exercise. Epperson is there.
This is Cammie Druin-Allaire for the Colonials.
Druin-Allaire on the balance beam. So Epperson's first pass successful.
And we actually just got word we have a sold-out crowd here in Reynolds Coliseum.
Yeah, it is a packed house. Lots of colors represented. A lot of red and black, as we've alluded to, with the combination of Nebraska, North Carolina State, and Maryland in competition here. But it's certainly good news
and
if you're a gymnastics fan at all.
Yeah,
this is
you
very
alluded
cool
to the energy, and it shows. I mean, there's a few empty seats that we can see, but my guess is they're probably at the concession stand. Maybe their team is on a bye right now, so they have a chance.
That's part of it, too. A couple of teams per rotation, not in competition.
So an Abby Epperson finishing up her floor routine.
A solid routine for Epperson. Her team very excited about it.
That's McKenna Singley on vault for Oregon State. A nice stuck landing. not quite as dynamic and powerful as we saw from some of those LSU vaults that we showed some highlights of. But again, you can't beat that stuck landing.
Clean landings do so much for collective team performance, and we've talked about it a couple of times already in the broadcast, but especially considering the fact that teams 2 through 5, according to their RQS scores, are not even half a point apart.
In gymnastics, it's, a quarter, a thousandth of a tenth is huge. So any of these little teeny tiny execution errors are really going to add up overall. This is Sarah Mermelstein on the left of your screen there for George Washington. And on the uneven bars for Maryland, I believe this is Chanel Agaron. I may be pronouncing that.
Caitlin Yanish over on the vault for Oregon State, as well as that routine is flying by as it typically does.
Again, Agron on the right side of your screen. And this is Mermelstein on the left for George Washington.
Meanwhile, Kinsey Roby enters her floor exercise at the center of the court. Agaron, a stuck landing on the right, and now we bring you Roby as McKenna Singley's 9.825 coming in on the vault. So the Beavers, a great start on that routine that you won't see as much of because of the nature of the sport. That event just takes way less time.
It really does. Well, to run down the vault runway and actually complete the vault, I would say a maximum of about 6 seconds, whereas a floor routine is going to run you about a minute, minute and a half, minute 20, somewhere around there.
Kinsey Roby, just a freshman from Windsor Heights, Iowa.
We've got Destiny Davis. A little sneak peek of her vault. Nice Yurchenko full, just that hop on the landing there.
She had a nice floor exercise routine a bit earlier, a 9.8 and change.
So again, I'm being nitpicky just because I judge competitive gymnastics, but her landings, her first pass and her last pass, that chest was down a little bit short, so the judges are going to take, again, maybe a half tenth on each of those.
Kinsey Roby just wraps up on the floor exercise for Nebraska. She's an all-around competitor for the Cornhuskers. And the floor exercise, as I alluded to before we got started with rotation 3, not necessarily Nebraska's best exercise, not necessarily hers. Her career high is a 9.75. That's compared to 9.8 or 9.9 in other events.
So again, her weaker event, but still strong enough
still
to be in the lineup.
Still very strong, and that's the case with most of these teams. Is that when I say weak, I mean it's not as good as the others.
Right. If you have to rank the 4 events, something has to come in last. We've got Carrie Thomas finishing up for Maryland on the uneven bars. Currently on balance beam for George Washington, this is Hannah Cohen. And running back on the vault there was Lena Green for Oregon State.
And Cohen, another freshman, in a big spot in the lineup for George Washington.
Caitlin Orrell.
Sticks the landing, and as you mentioned, Caitlin Orrell next up for Nebraska in the floor exercise.
Already a lot of pizzazz in this floor routine. I like how Nebraska has their tattoo or their sticker on the back of their neck. A lot of teams put it on like their cheek beside their eye, right or left. Nebraska went with, the back of their neck. Just a little bit different.
It would have to promote good teamwork because you can't do that on your own. No. You got to find a teammate to help yourself out with that.
There you can see Oregon State on their right eye. So This is Mary Jacobson getting ready to go. So again, Mary Jacobson, she's saluted. She'll be done with her vault before Caitlin's even close to finishing with her floor routine.
Oral earlier this season a 9.875. That's her career high as well. It's a great energy in this routine out of her.
When she hits these tumbling passes, she's got the expressions down.
Well, she seemed to do a great job with that final pass. Can't imagine that score would be much lower than her career high at 9.875.
Definitely. And catching back up, this is Kirsten Peterman for Maryland on the uneven bars, and Liz Filer for the Colonials.
Filer, one of their senior all-around competitors. Peterman gets the Terps fired up.
And again, you can hear the crowd in the background. It is just phenomenal to see so many people in this arena. It only holds 5,500, which is less than before when Reynolds renovated. And I know some of these teams, LSU's facility holds twice that. Nebraska's probably holds twice that as well. But this is huge.
No, it's certainly a great environment for this NCAA regional competition.
That was Mary L. Ardano. Again, the individual specialist out of Towson competing with the Oregon State Beavers.
Yeah, she had
today.
a great floor routine earlier. As Filer finishes up on the balance beam, that's to your right.
We'll get started with Grace Williams.
Williams, a senior, all-around competitor out of Linden, Michigan. Positive response to her first pass.
And there you can see the teams are all corralled. They have to stay in this little section. And they call it, I mean, they really do call it a corral, just, you know, like an animal of any sort. But you can still see the teams, I mean, they get behind it. They still do the routines. They're cheering as loud as they possibly can.
Just not quite as fun as them being lined up across the floor.
It's not. But with so many teams, you got to keep them contained. For the judges, it'd be a nightmare if they had gymnasts on all sides of the event. So I get it.
And seeing as how you judge, Rachel, that's where your perspective comes in handy.
Yeah, so at these meets, at most meets, you only have 2 judges, one on each side. So at conference, regionals, and nationals, you actually have more. But conference and regionals, you have 4 judges, plus you have 2 line judges. So there's really no room for the gymnasts to stand around the floor. They've got somebody on all 4 sides.
You see, as Williams finishes up on the floor exercise, Caitlin Orrell came in at a 9.85, so just a hair below her season and career high. Still impressive.
Brooke Bray starting off her balance beam routine.
Williams,
So,
a
vault
lot of
is
flair to
gone.
finish that up as well. As you are correct, the vault is completed for this rotation. Bray on the balance beam to your right. As Maryland will continue on the uneven bars on the left side of your screen.
I believe this is Alicia Farina. I think they're calculating Audrey Barber's score. I could also be wrong, though. This could be Audrey Barber. Not having seen Maryland before, it's harder for us to keep up with who's actually competing.
Well, that and of course the fact that there are 6 teams competing at
Right.
the same time. But other than that,
on.
you're right.
It's a
Other
lot
than you're right.
going
That's
on.
the complicated part.
So if you're a Maryland fan, I apologize. I'm not sure if it's Audrey or Alicia, but we'll find out in just a minute.
That we know for a fact was Brooke Bray finishing up on the balance beam for George Washington. She, the senior, also competes in the floor exercise.
On floor here, this is Sienna Kraus. Kraus again named All-American on a couple events this year.
Was an All-American a year ago as well. Kraus, a junior. She's had great scores in the floor exercise throughout her career. A career best of a 9.975.
So it looks like that was Audrey Barber that finished up for Maryland on the uneven bars. And last in their lineup is Alicia Farina, who we'll see just momentarily. Jillian Winstanley is the last competitor for George Washington on beam before we get into our event and all-around specialists.
Winstanley, another senior all-around for the Colonials to your right, as Kraus finishes up a spectacular go at the floor exercise. Of course, you hear the Go Big Red chants from that particular section of our sold-out crowd here at Reynolds Coliseum.
Got Jillian's teammates there cheering her on.
George Washington, led by their head coach, Margie Foster Cunningham. She was the Eagle Coach of the Year. As a matter of fact, that's been the case each of the past 3 seasons.
This George Washington team has just come a long way in the last 3 to 5 years. So that doesn't surprise me at all that she's been the conference coach of the year. They've just, even since I competed, when I competed, George Washington was not always a super competitive team. They were good at what they did, but they didn't have the skill level to actually make it. A lot of times 2 regionals, a lot of times they had some event specialists but never made it as a team. Whereas now they're ranked 19th in the country, so you can see what she's been able to do.
No doubt about it. She is in her 33rd season overall as a head coach, of course.
Megan Schweihofer here for Nebraska. Again, one of the other All-Americans, first team on floor.
Earlier this season recorded a 9.95 in the floor routine.
That was Alicia Farina finishing up for Maryland on the uneven bars.
Schweihofer's performances throughout her career have just been fantastic. She's only a junior, but her career high as an all-arounder in every event is at least a 9.9.
Absolutely phenomenal. And she's still got 1 more year to improve.
So here she finishes her floor exercise.
Taylor White there on the right for William and Mary.
So the Tribe not here competing as a team, but White competing on the balance beam. As you see, Schweihofer receives Go Big Red chants. White just a little bit of a misstep back on the balance beam.
Yeah, great job there. And this is actually it actually worked out that Taylor just finished up. She's got her teammate, Katie Waldman, getting ready to go on the floor exercise.
Just in time to watch her and cheer her on.
That's the hardest part about some of these individual and event specialists is you have to bring your whole coaching staff because you could have different people up at the exact same time on different events. You got Caitlin Headland for the Tar Heels on the uneven bars. Again, several Tar Heels competing here at this Raleigh Regional.
A lot of momentum carrying her into that dismount. Powerful routine. She sticks the landing. And you mentioned Katie Weldman here on the floor exercise beginning.
And again, as close as this William and Mary tribe's going to get to home turf. So I think they competed here 3 times this season, so this is her 4th time out on this floor. She should be pretty used to it.
And the funny thing, Rachel, is now you see Nebraska's gymnasts.
Oh, they're just as excited.
And they're sounding out Weldman's routine with her. I don't know how much time she may have had to teach them, but
they had a practice session yesterday, and then they had warm-ups today. That's it.
Other than that,
that's it.
I mean, they're doing it the same way that a team that's been with her all season long would do. That was that was great to see.
They're just great. They're clapping along. They're really cheering her on, which floor is a tiring event. You're out there for almost a minute and a half, jumping around, dancing, tumbling. By the time you're done, you are out of breath. So any momentum that you can get from the crowd, from the Nebraska team, is great. Any little extra oomph is going to be phenomenal.
When she took that and used it, did Weldman. A lot of bounce on that final pass. And finishes up a great routine. So Waldman finishes up as an individual specialist with the floor exercise. All other scores are in, and that does it for the 3rd rotation. So we're halfway through our 6 rotations here at the Raleigh Regional. This is the Women's National Collegiate Gymnastics Championships from Reynolds Coliseum, sold out in Raleigh, North Carolina on ESPN3. Back with you here on ESPN3, set for rotation 4 of 6 in this NCAA regional meet. And the 4th rotation will look a little bit like this. Excited to see the Tigers of LSU back into the rotation for 1. They had a bye in the last rotation, but on their best event, the uneven bars, they ranked top in the country this past season.
Yeah, I'm super excited to watch LSU on bars. Again, you can only get a total of 50 on the event, and so they are nearly perfect, only coming in behind that at a .15. And as you can see, they're ranked 1st. Nebraska still in the top 10 on vault, which is what they're going to be competing on, and they're really not going down without a fight. Their first 2 events have been absolutely phenomenal. Then you've got Maryland on balance beam and NC State on floor.
And the exciting thing here in Raleigh, NC State performing their floor exercises on their home floor, so expect the best of what they have to offer.
That was Carly Hutchinson getting started for Nebraska. So Yurchenko full, again, they've devalued that over the last couple of years, only worth a 9.95. And she did take a decently, large-sized step.
Mackenzie Itkush getting things started on the floor exercise, as on the bars it's Sammy Durant for LSU. Both of those on your screen, Durant on the left, Itkush on the right. Durant, just a little bit of a misstep backward on the landing, but you can tell right away they established themselves very strongly on those uneven bars. It's tough for them to manage a routine that's anything less than a 9.8.
Yeah, definitely. The unique thing is when LSU was here just a few weeks ago, bars was probably one of their worst events. None of them could seem to be able to stick a landing. So we'll see how they do here this afternoon. Over on balance beam, this is Kirsten Peterman in the leadoff spot.
Peterman has assumed that role in a couple of events so far for the Terps. Itkush looks to make her final pass.
Everyone competing right now is in red and black. So we had Kinsey Roby, on vault. Kirsten Peterman finishing up for Maryland on balance beam, and Mackenzie Itkush on floor exercise.
Great routine out of Itkush, and sort of a strange moment at the very beginning of a rotation. Everybody finished up at the same time, so a small gap in something to watch. That's not normally the case.
It really isn't, and so right now we don't have anyone competing. Maya Hambrook's actually getting ready to go on the uneven bars, so we'll take a look at her. But the other 3 events, the judges are actually tabulating all of the scores currently.
Itkush, tremendous in all her events, as we've mentioned, her outstanding all-around scores. But she's very good on the uneven bars in particular.
There you see Sammy Duran's 9.8. So again, just that small hop, and Maya Hambrook not quite able to hold on to that landing. A slight little shuffle of the foot, but if the judges saw it, then it's going to be at least a half tenth. They can't judge in quarter tenths in the collegiate level.
Hambrook's season high at 9.975.
That was Abby Epperson for the Huskers.
Now Alexis Buechler here on the floor exercise, second up for North Carolina State.
A lot of people would think NC State does have the home team advantage, but again, there's fans here from all over the country. Every team brought a huge crowd, and although State is used to competing on their own equipment, these other teams are here fighting, and they're saying, nope, this is going to be our new home turf.
And there is a sort of an assortment, a smattering of fan bases in certain parts of the arena, but just in front of us, you can see there's a clearly dedicated Nebraska section right next to a very clearly dedicated LSU section.
LSU's the easiest one to pick out.
Right.
Even the orange kind of blends in with the red a little bit, depending on what shade of orange.
And they use it with the black in similar ways,
But LSU, you got the purple or the gold. There's no other color. There's no option.
In a lot of cases, their fans wearing Mardi Gras beads, so hard to mistake. You're right.
Sabria Rouse finishing up there for Maryland on the balance beam.
You see Epperson comes in at a 9.850 on the vault for Nebraska as Buechler rounds out her performance.
And Ruby Harrell there for the Tigers.
Harrell, if I'm not mistaken, only competes in the uneven bars. Stuck a solid landing there.
They have 3 all-arounders, and then they've got a couple that, do 2 and 3 events, and I do believe they've got some that just do the 1.
So Nebraska's
this looks like Sienna
vaulter.
Krause.
It is Sienna Krause, in fact. She's second to last. Megan Schleihofer, Taylor Houchin will be rounding out the lineup for them.
And again, she runs back like, hey, just doing the cakewalk, doing what I came here to do.
It's impressive. Nebraska, very business as usual demeanor. Krause in particular, not that she wasn't peppy during her floor exercise a bit earlier, but a much more focused, determined look on her face than you'll see out of a lot of people on the floor exercise. Caitlin Fillard particularly smiley, just a very
and
pleasant
some of the girls,
personality.
They stick their landings and they throw their head back, their arms are up, they jump up and down, and then they're like, oh yeah, salute, and then sprint back to my team. Some people, it's, this is what I come to do. I do it all the time, every day, and I'm just going to jog on back and get my high fives.
So Caitlin Fillard, all-arounder for the Wolfpack, now makes her turn at the floor exercise. Kennedy Edney jumping onto the uneven bars to the right on your screen.
And the crowd, that was a huge vault out of Taylor Houchin for the Huskers. A nice stuck 1.5. They're flashing 10s from the cheering section. They have signs that say 10 on them. Don't know that really influences the judges, but that's what they think that she should get.
I noticed that's the only score that they bothered to print a sign
Oh,
for,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Nobody prints 995. Only a 10. There you see Ruby Harold's updated score, 9825 out of the Tigers. That was Emily LeBlanc finishing up for Maryland.
And then Fullard's final pass on the way.
And it looks like they were almost right. It was a 995.
Fullard, her weight shifted forward just a little bit on that landing. She recovered nicely.
Yeah, just a little bit low. Didn't quite have the rotation that she's normally used to. It was plenty high. She just needed about another, eighth of a circle on that rotation.
That's Katie Waldman of William and Mary competing individually on the vault. A bit of a low arc off of that vault routine there.
Definitely.
Complicated her landing for sure.
Yeah, the judges really look for, again, height, distance, dynamics. So that one was a little lackluster on each. It'll be reflected in the scores, whereas some of them you saw that they're flying, 6 feet above the vault table. They end at the back of the mat, and it's just really dynamic as far as the power that comes with it.
So you see some teammates readying the floor for Alexa Phillips. Next in line for the floor exercise for North Carolina State.
Audrey Barber for the Terrapins.
She makes her way to the balance beam. 2 more following Barber. And Priestman over on the uneven bars, currently working for LSU. Huge roar out of the LSU crowd as Priestman finishes her routine.
Nice stuck double layout dismount.
Barber begins motion on the balance beam, and here's Alexa Phillips on for her floor exercise.
9725 out of Fullard. So again, the Wolfpack score is a little bit lower than we've seen them at the end of season.
You can tell for Alexa Phillips, as we've seen it all season long, very personal routine on the floor exercise. As for her opening pass, she always has her twin sister, Paris, opposite her.
At these meets, again, we've talked about all the gymnasts being in a corral. If you have a mat on the floor, or if you need one for safety purposes, you can have one teammate out there that can help. And of course, she chooses for her sister to be out there. I probably would too. One of the 2 sets of twins that we actually have competing.
Right, Carly and Tori
this
Hutchinson
afternoon.
of Nebraska as well. So as a twin myself, I told you prior to the broadcast, Rachel, I'm in favor of that.
Yes.
I love the idea of twins competing together on the same team.
Yeah, not only do these parents have one phenomenal gymnast, they have 2. Hopefully both got scholarships, so you don't have that rivalry internally.
You would hope so.
I would
Certainly
hope so.
for the parents.
Either both or none.
So Phillips finishing off for North Carolina State, as now Sarah Finnegan on the uneven bars for LSU, the all-around competitor, one of the top in the country. We mentioned earlier, RQS-wise, she's the 4th all-around competitor in the nation, and the 3 ahead of her, former Olympians.
And Finnegan, a ton of accolades herself as an international elite gymnast, alternates on several of these teams. So she's used to competing against some, only 5 girls actually make the Olympic team. She's used to competing against a lot of them.
And you saw head coach Dee Dee Bro there, an emphatic fist pump. Even in her 40-plus seasons at the helm, she still has the energy and the exuberance to get excited about a nice performance. So that's great to see.
Carrie Thomas for Maryland. Nice stuck landing on the dismount there. I think one of the unique things that I've noticed is, I'm going to knock on wood ahead of time, Beam has actually done phenomenal for all of these teams. So even with this sold out crowd, with all of the energy, with all of the noise, everyone's really been able to contain themselves on the balance beam.
So a 9.85 for Alexa Phillips comes in as she's followed up by Drew Grantham. And I have to say, Rachel, now being in their home venue, I think this routine in particular is one of the crowd favorites.
It definitely is. And Drew doesn't have the biggest tumbling passes in terms of skill level, so all the passes are rated, A through E, E being the hardest. Alexa Phillips starts off with an E tumbling pass. Drew starts off with a C tumbling pass. But here, as long as you have a 10.0 start value, it's about execution. How cleanly do you do what you actually do?
Morgan Lane over on the uneven bars here individually is an all-around competitor for the Tar Heels.
And again, Morgan hoping to make it to the NCAA National Championship as an individual all-around competitor, which I really think that out of all of the ones that are here, I think she has a really good shot at making it.
And I mentioned the fact that I think Drew Grantham's, of all of the NC State floor exercisers, I think her routine's the favorite of the regular crowd of Wolfpack fans. Now, of course, that's a mixed crowd today, but on a normal occasion, her routine gets the most roars. But I think it's because of her personality. You saw her on that last pass, like gleaming from ear to ear. Oh, what a smile.
She nails that last pass, and like we mentioned on vault a little bit earlier, some of the girls they nail their pass and their arms go up. You can see it on their face. Some of them, it's just business as usual. And Drew's one of the more, facial expressions really get into it. Yeah, it's just her personality.
Wears her emotions on her sleeve. It makes it a lot of fun to watch. As Agaron on the balance beam now for Maryland.
Nice gainer full off the side. A 9.85 already coming in for Grantham on floor. So her and Phillips a little bit below their season and career highs of 9.9s. So we've got some individual event specialists left. We've got Gabriella Yarusi on the balance beam who will be up as we finish up with Chelsea Knight in the regular lineup for this NC State team.
And Chelsea Knight, the anchor in all events for North Carolina State, rounding out the floor exercise.
Chelsea, another one that I think has a really great chance at making it to NCAA championships as an individual if NC State doesn't make it as a team. There you can see Coach Landris. Out of all the coaches that have, 20, 30 years under their belt, this is Kim's first year with this Wolfpack team.
It's quite the contrast. There's plenty of experience in the coaching ranks, of course, but her first leading the way for the Wolfpack here. And, of course, you compare that to Dee Dee Bro of LSU in her 40-something year.
One team, 41 years, and Kim's got a long way to go for that one. Another 40 to be exact.
She's very happy with Chelsea Knight's performance all season long, as you can imagine.
Chelsea, one of the seniors on the team, definitely going to be hard to replace. So take again, Mrs. Gabriella Yarusi.
Chelsea Knight, you mentioned a really good chance to further her performance this season, if not for North Carolina State as a team, as an individual. She's a top 20 all-around performer in the country as things currently stand.
Definitely, and she's had phenomenal seasons up until this point. It's so great that NC State the last couple of years has not made regionals as a team. She's always had to compete as an individual, so I'm sure she's just loving having the support of her team behind her, and if that can push her on to that NCAA championship meet, she's going to love it even further.
She loves the support, even if it is restricted to a corral of sorts on a routine like that.
Yeah, so we've got one more competitor. We've got Kaja Hislop out of UNC, so they are taping up her mat. And again, she appears to be okay after that fall that she had on the balance beam. I think her foot just slipped, maybe a slightly awkward landing, but she's still competing, so she seems to be okay.
And as we mentioned earlier, I think more than anything, she was upset with her performance, not sticking the landing, more so than she was worried about an injury of any type.
Definitely.
But she'll be last in line for this fourth rotation as Chelsea Knight's score comes in at a 9.85. It just flashed before displaying Hislop's name.
So Kaja in the same position that Lane was in at rotation, I believe 1, where she is the only competitor on the floor currently. And she's fun to watch. Her tumbling is just huge. She gets so much air underneath of her. I know the floor is pretty springy, but she uses those springs to her advantage. And again, one of the surprising things, so UNC and NC State, normally a huge rivalry, but if you take a look at the corral, all of the NC State girls are cheering for a UNC gymnast. I don't know if you'll ever see that in basketball, ever.
No, certainly not in any other sport. That's a safe assumption, I think.
Yeah. That would never happen in basketball or football.
So again, something very cool you get out of these regionals.
Definitely.
Where the individuals are assigned to a team for sake of fitting them into a rotation. Hislop makes up for not as well a performance on the beam.
That was a phenomenal floor routine to come back from that after her fall on beam.
So she's able to smile about her day, and that brings us to a close here in rotation number 4, the 5th of 6 coming up next on the other side. You're tuned in to the NCAA Championships. This is the Raleigh Regional on ESPN 3. Back with you here on ESPN 3, the NCAA Women's Gymnastics Championships. This regional being competed for in Raleigh, North Carolina, here at Reynolds Coliseum, where we've had a sellout crowd. And the second-ranked Tigers of LSU performing well, as are the Cornhuskers of Nebraska, no doubt about it.
Yeah, the Cornhuskers, so they've only scored a 197 as a team one time this year, and as long as they can go into this last event that they've got and get a 48-8, they should be on track to do that again. So what a phenomenal way to wrap up this Raleigh regional for the Nebraska Huskers.
If that is the case for Nebraska, no time like the present to have your best meet of the season when trying to seal a spot as one of those top 2 of these 6 teams to advance to the national semifinal.
Yeah, they've had a phenomenal meet. So not as many, career high, season high matches, but overall as a team, it doesn't matter if one person gets a career high or a season best or anything of that sort. The team needs to be the strongest aspect.
You're seeing highlights from North Carolina State's run on the floor exercise. They were the last to take the floor there. In rotation 5, the Wolfpack hosting this regional will move over to the vault. It'll be Oregon State on the uneven bars. The balance beam is where LSU will compete. They're 3rd in the country in that event. And then George Washington moves front and center to the floor exercise.
And again, you can see these regional qualifying scores, there's less than 3/10 that separate these 4 teams going into this respective rotation. So all of these teams are capable and have consistently performed very, very well.
So it will be certainly interesting to see how things progress moving forward. Aaron McAdaig getting things started on the balance beam
one of the top leadoff performers in the country, traditionally gets huge scores. So again, most people put just kind of a strong, stable person up, but Aaron, 9.9, 9.95s, if that can be their leadoff person, then why not? It really sets the pace for the rest of the team.
You have a competitor like that, it's a great strategy. Caitlin Fillard now on the vault for North Carolina State. All-around competitor. A lot of bounce, mainly backward on the landing there.
Yeah, it was a great layout, Yurchenko full, just that hop on the landing, going to take that down to about a 9.8, 9.85. But again, it's still a very strong vault. And then we've got Sarah Mermelstein for the Colonials. Her first pass, she actually landed quite a bit low, still stayed on her feet. But when her score comes up, if it's a little bit lower than what most spectators would expect, that's the reason why, is that first tumbling pass was quite a bit lower than normal.
We saw the LSU crowd very happy with Macadeg's final showing there on the bar. Mermelstein.
Florida 9.8 on vault. And again, after this rotation, NC State and LSU will be done. So those two teams actually finish on a bye. We'll know exactly where they're at and what the scores to beat are after this rotation.
Mackenzie Itkush there on the vault for North Carolina State as Mermelstein finishes up. And Shireen Comadust gets set on the uneven bars for Oregon State. You see the 9.8 filter in according to the graphic there for Fillard, as you mentioned, Rachel. Not her best, but a good showing.
Yeah, I thought that was a great vault for Fillard. She's a strong competitor. Didn't stick the landing, and again, when the vault's not worth a 10, those 10s really do add up. Maya Hambrick on the balance beam.
Hambrick along with teammate Sarah Finnegan. A couple of the best all-around competitors in the country, as we've mentioned.
Again, this is Shireen on the uneven bars for Oregon State. So two just absolutely phenomenal competitors. It's hard to pick one to watch.
Stuck landing forward, and that might be my mistake. I believe that's Mariana Calusi Palath. So I think we missed Shireen, must have been first. You saw, yep, that's the case. The 9.850, her score coming in.
Again, it's hard to keep up with everyone. Maya, just a phenomenal routine. You could hear the eruption from the crowd. As we have Jillian Winstanley on floor.
We've seen Winstanley for a couple of events so far. One of the top gymnasts for George Washington for sure. So 9.85 comes in for Mackenzie Itkush on the vault for North Carolina State.
There you see Paris Phillips scored just in a 9.825 for the Wolfpack. Followed up by Drew Grantham. A huge layout, Yurchenko full again, just that teeniest little shuffle of the feet.
Would have to imagine that's going to fall in somewhere around, what, 9.85? Something along those lines?
Somewhere around there, definitely. I thought that was just as good as the last couple of vaults. Paris has been out all season. We actually haven't seen her. She competed for the first time on vault this season at the last meet at Eagle Championships and went 9.8 plus, another 9.8 here, and then we'll see Alexa here in just a minute.
Tough break for Winstanley on her final pass of the floor exercise. Now Kennedy Edney of LSU. She's had a tremendous year.
Definitely unfortunate for Jillian. So again, if George Washington doesn't make it as a team, she had a chance to make it as an individual all-around specialist. With that fall, I'm going to say that probably takes her out of the running.
And McKenna Singley, a big routine on the uneven bars, which is off of your screen, but A resounding ovation from her teammates as well as Phillips.
Alexa Phillips.
Alexa makes good on her vault there.
We don't see them enough to be able to tell them apart. So if I didn't have my lineups and rosters.
They are pretty similar. As someone who takes an interest, again, I'm a twin myself, so I take interest in knowing how similar sets of twins are. At face value, they look a lot alike.
Yes, definitely. You can see Kennedy Edney there, a huge routine, nice stuck landing on the dismount. High fives all around. I believe she'll get the crown for the stuck landing.
I think so. I think that merits a crown, which she does get it just outside the corral.
Yes.
You're right. It's not quite as fun.
It's not.
When the teams are gated in to a certain space, but a fun tradition nonetheless for LSU.
Mary Jacobson getting ready to go for George Washington. Or sorry, this is Kataya Kopova for George Washington. Mary Jacobson will be up next for the Beavers.
On the uneven bars.
On the uneven bars. So Katya on the left, Mary on the right. And it looks like NC State is done on vault. So
Jacobson,
Kaja
some
Hislop.
Powerful movements on the uneven bars, and it showed almost in that awkward landing.
Yeah, that was a great routine, though. Outside of that little, again, kind of funky, I don't even know what to call it.
And now we've got Christina Desiderio on your right of LSU. As Katya Karpova on the floor exercise for GW.
A 9.85 out of Chelsea Knight on vault. And again, Kaja Hislop competing as an event specialist. So the event specialists have a little bit harder time making it to nationals. You actually have to win the event at this meet in order to make it as a specific event specialist, whereas the all-arounders, it's the top two not on a team already going. So it does make it a little bit more difficult for an event specialist.
Hislop, a slight step backward on the dismount for the vault. As
she was going for the stick.
Up. And Desiderio wrapped up on the balance beam for LSU. A very impressive go at it. I wonder if it'll meet her season high of a 9.95. We will soon find out. When Stanley, because of that fall, dropped to a 9.15 in her floor routine.
Karpova just finishing up there for George Washington.
And a couple of scores behind there on our graphic is Kennedy Edney with a 9.9 on the balance beam. And
this is Reagan Campbell on the left for LSU.
How about that start from Reagan, the complete handstand?
Always fun to watch those interesting moves. And then we've got Hallie Briscoe. The nice stuck double back dismount off the uneven bars. It looked like it went a little more out than it did up, but she was still able to pull it around, still stuck the dismount, so great job there.
Yeah, again, we don't have the same vantage point that the judges do, but I think you're correct there. Oregon State, very energetic with its uneven bar performances so far. As Iris Lowry will be next up for them.
Again, Reagan Campbell on the right side of your screen for the Tigers.
Campbell finishes up a beautiful landing, very graceful.
Another stuck landing, another pass of the crown.
Yep, she will, for certain, if any landing for LSU has ever deserved the crown, I think that's the one. She made that look easy.
This is Sydney Crossa.
Crossa at the floor exercise for George Washington.
Crossa, sophomore out of Stony Brook, New York. She's actually had to wait quite a while for her turn to compete here today, so she does floor and then we'll do vault next. So just a bit of waiting around. We marched in at 4 o'clock and we're a little bit after 6 o'clock now, so she's essentially been sitting, cheering her fan,
she's been corralled with her teammates.
She's been corralled, so she's been jumping around from a corral for the last 2 hours and has to come out here and compete on floor and vault.
Danny DeSaints with a big finish on the uneven bars for Oregon State.
I'm going to go with she liked that routine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, Sarah Finnegan wrapping up for LSU on the balance beam.
That was a fun routine out of Crossa. She was excited with her performance for sure. And Finnegan, this is a routine, one of two, that she has registered a perfect 10 in her career. So
I still want to see one. I haven't given up hope yet.
There's a great landing there. She gets a crown. Maybe she gets a 10 to go with it.
But since this is LSU's last event and she's the last competitor, if they don't flash a 10, then I'll have to give up hope.
Right.
I don't think any other team has scored a 10 this season outside of LSU. So that's why I'm putting all the pressure on them.
Sure. No, that's fair. That's reasonable. Reasonable
it's
expectations.
A fair assumption.
Absolutely.
Now, you will know if there's a 10 because the crowd will erupt, no matter if you're LSU
especially
or not.
as we have it portioned the way that we currently do here at Reynolds Coliseum. There's a large LSU contingency.
It's hard to see from the picture on your screen, but just above on the top side where the little scoreboard is that says Gymnastics Championships in blue, that's all the LSU fans above that.
You could see the
little yellow pom-pom
for just a second there. And there they are. Scarves, palms. I saw some Mardi Gras beads earlier, but none of those are up on the screen now.
And it's a 9-9 for Finnegan. Still a great score.
So still a tremendous score.
Got Morgan Lane competing on the right there for Carolina. And Marielle Ardino for Towson as the all-around specialist on the bars.
Ardino, slight step back with the right foot, but a nice routine on the uneven bars. Lane has been solid today as she's performed in a few events thus far. And drew in a layer next on the floor exercise for George Washington.
So LSU is completed with their competition, a 197.675. Great score, exactly where I would expect LSU to be.
So from their perspective, they just wanted to come in here and do business as usual. And chances are they were going to tie up one of those top two seeds.
Yeah, they're the number 2 ranked team in the country. I had no doubt. Unless they came in here and just fell all over the place, they were definitely going to the NCAA semifinals.
Drew in a layer, finishes up for George Washington, runs down the line. High fives all around.
So we've got one more floor competitor for the Colonials, followed by our individual all-around specialist. Bars is done, beam is done, and vault is done on this 5th rotation. So just 2 more competitors on floor. A 9.675 for Mary L. on the uneven bars.
And for LSU, you're right, not far off from their overall team qualifying score of a 197.890.
And
a
really,
bit below that.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, a couple stuck landings here and there, but again, those last tumbling passes on floor for quite a few of them seem just a little bit off, and even if it's a half tenth, that's going to add up. They're about 2.5 tenths off of their RQS, and again, those little execution errors.
Yeah, the second highest RQS heading into this match of the 6 teams anyways was Nebraska at a 196.8 and change. So they're over a full point ahead of second place. Now that doesn't incorporate the fact that Nebraska is having its best meet of the season, so maybe they sneak up there and compete with them. But certainly a little bit of a margin for error when it came to LSU coming into this particular meet today.
This is Madeline Siebold, front and center.
And Siebold, the only competitor currently, a senior out of Tampa, Florida for George Washington. Siebold, a fun routine so far. Her teammates are certainly into it.
Season high on this event of 9.925.
This is a specialist on the floor exercise. Great landing there on her final pass. And I would imagine that would score something similar to the 9.925.
It's going to be close. I don't know if it'll be quite at that 9.9 level, but I would say at least 9.8 plus. So she will wrap it up for George Washington. Again, we've still got Taylor White from William and Mary as an all-around event specialist.
And White, just like Siebold, will be the center of attention.
And again, normally conference foes, but today they're one team on floor.
And to be as close as those two schools are locally, that's a fun matching.
Definitely.
To me, anyways, because
kind of like the NC State girls cheering
it's
for
very,
Carolina.
and it's very possible that they are familiar with each other outside of Eagle competition. Much like the gymnasts you mentioned, Hislop performing with North Carolina State and having them cheer on her floor exercise routine, which anywhere in the state of North Carolina for any sport other than gymnastics, it's going to be unheard of.
Right. And Siebold a 9.85 coming in there. So again, not quite that career high, but a 9.85 is still a phenomenal score. Great contribution to the George Washington team total.
White very confident through her first pass.
Sometimes it is kind of nice being the only person out on the floor because you know all eyes are on you, so you may as well go out and actually give the audience a performance.
And definitely by this point in the day, I mean, we're into the 5th rotation here. She's wrapping up the 5th rotation. In White's case specifically, she's already competed in another event, so maybe some of the NCAA regional jitters are gone. Seemed a lot more laid back there. Given the setting especially.
Definitely. Just a little awkward on that last tumbling pass on the landing. Outside of that, it was a great routine for White. little out of breath. So again, a minute and a half of jumping around and leaping and tumbling, it wears you out.
That will do it to you, as that puts a bow on rotation number 5, the 6th and final of which coming up on the other side. You're tuned in to the NCAA Women's National Collegiate Gymnastics Championships on ESPN 3. What a day it has been here at the Raleigh Regional. This, the Women's National Collegiate Gymnastics Championships, as North Carolina State just on the vault in rotation 5, and they and LSU, who is the clubhouse leader, if you will, here on Masters Weekend. I'll use a golf term. NC State and LSU both on bye for this final and 6th rotation, but Nebraska well in the hunt, and will start on the uneven bars.
Yeah, this has been, like you said, it's been an absolutely phenomenal meet. LSU right where they should be, so they've got a team total about 2/10 below their RQS. Perfectly fine. They've had a couple of little mishaps here and there, but as you can see on beam, they finished up strong. They're going to end on a bye, so we actually won't see them in rotation 6. George Washington, a little bit below where they've traditionally performed. So again, they come into this meet technically seeded in the 4th spot, but ranked 19th in the country. I think their scores have been a little bit lower than where they've traditionally been. Looking at rotation 6, the RQS is coming in within a 10th of each other. It's crazy.
It is certainly crazy, and you've noticed for the RQS scores throughout all of today, no matter what that ranking next to their school logo says, pretty much every school in every event has had an RQS above a 49.
Yeah, and you can just see, so George Washington, a 49.2, ranks 11th on vault, but a 49.1 is 38th on floor. So just the difference in events really plays into that as well. But again, these teams are all absolutely wonderful at what they do. They've worked really hard this season to get those RQSs to be able to come to this meet as a team, which is extremely hard to do.
Crossa getting things started for George Washington after she sat for a couple of hours to begin this meet, and then had her floor exercise followed up quickly there within just moments of each other. Her vault.
Yeah, she was one of the last people to go on floor, had about a 5-minute break where they get to rotate and do their touch warm-up, and then competes first. So her whole meet is done in a matter of, I'd say, less than 10 minutes. So up first on balance beam, this is McKenna Singley for Oregon State, and on floor we've got Megan McClelland for the Terrapins.
So McClelland takes the floor on the left of your screen, as Singley, all-around competitor for Oregon State, finishes up on the beam.
And Crossa's score already in a 9.825 for the George Washington Colonials.
Meanwhile, over on the uneven bars, Nebraska not quite started yet.
Julia McLaughlin there on the right side of your screen.
Quite the stumble there, kind of low trajectory on the vault for her.
Definitely a little bit low, and again, we saw Singley fall, took the fall and went out of bounds, so that's going to be a significant deduction on her overall score. And then getting started, again, Danielle Breen for the Huskers.
She'll be followed by Kinsey Roby and Megan Schweihofer, who we've seen a lot of. Breen completes the routine to get things started for Nebraska on the uneven bars.
And again, Nebraska having the best meet of their season so far. As long as they can get a 48.8, they're going to surpass that 197 mark, which they've only done one time this season.
When you saw, according to their RQS, that should be definitely achievable, barring no major mishaps.
As long as all the routines can look like Danielle's did, they should be set.
McClelland wraps it up on the floor exercise and clears the way for
Liz Filer
another
on your screen
teammate.
here for vault.
Liz Filer here of George Washington.
And you see just all those hops on the landings for George Washington, not able to really control those. Just going to keep eating away at that team total. Oregon State, a slightly low score to start off with, a 9.575. This is Alyssa Minyard. Surprisingly, Beam is the only one competing right now. Normally we get that when it comes down to the floor exercise. But everyone else has their scores being calculated.
Minyard here also competed in the uneven bars a bit earlier in the evening. As Oregon State, not quite on the heels of Nebraska as far as an overall score is concerned, but they could certainly put themselves in the same kind of contention.
Again, as long as Nebraska can keep doing what they're doing, I'm going to knock on wood, I think they're going to take that second team position into the NCAA National Semifinals.
Kinsey Roby sticks the landing for the Huskers, and that's a good go at it. Certainly if they look all like that on the uneven bars, that will be a fine score, as you see Danielle Breen coming in with a 9-2 even to open things up.
This should be Kirsten Peterman getting ready to compete for Maryland on floor.
Peterman, we've seen
it looks like a huge score on
else.
vault. We should see that flash here in just a minute. And 9-9 for Jillian Winstanley.
And you see the opening, Megan McClelland, a 9-1 even for Maryland. Now Peterman follows her performance.
Sarah Mermelstein there. A great landing, a little bit low again, looking for that height and the distance, the dynamics. Not quite where some of the other vaults have been, but the landing was really clean.
So potentially consecutive big scores on the vault for George Washington, as finally saw Winstanley come through the 9-9 on your graphic, as you mentioned, Rachel.
Should be Caitlin Yanish on the right side of your screen there for the Beavers. And a 9.875 coming in for Nebraska on the uneven bars.
That was Kinsey Roby, the second in that routine. So they've delivered so far here on the uneven bars. Peterman wrapping things up on the floor for Maryland is now removed to Schweihofer there on the left of your screen.
Again, an All-American, so always big things out of her. It kind of pinged off a little bit forward on that one, had to pull those legs around to get it around, but still on her feet, still going to be a pretty good score.
And in all her other events, she's had a phenomenal meet, a big part of Nebraska having potentially their best meet of the season.
Cammie Druin-Allaire there on vault, just a little bit uncontrolled on that landing, had a little too much power, a little more than she's probably used to, had to take quite a big step, but that wraps up George Washington. Again, vault goes so quickly. We got to see a few of them here and there, but Cammie was their last competitor, and then Taylor White, again, the individual all-around specialist in that group.
Mermelstein, a 9.75. We'll see what Cammie's score is to round things out, but it might not affect their overall score at all, which could end up at a 195.25.
And again, for George Washington, it's a little bit low. They came in with an RQS over a 196. Can't remember exactly what it was, but it was 196.4, somewhere around there. So they're over a point below that RQS. Just a little off here and there.
And they were ranked just one spot ahead of North Carolina State entering this meet, according to the regional qualifying scores. Taylor White.
There you see Taylor finishing up her competition. A nice handspring front, again, not worth a 10.0. little uncontrolled on that landing, but she did have a lot of power. A great end to her season.
We talked about throughout much of the season the balance beam, and just as I say that, a stumble on the balance beam. We've talked about it being sort of the tricky part here at Reynolds Coliseum for much of the season, with landings anyways. It seems to me like that's been the vault today. Not a lot of smooth, crisp landings.
Definitely. Vault, I don't know if it's the energy. They've just got too much power, so they've got to work on controlling that. Abby
Epperson on the right side of your screen sticks the landing for Nebraska. So that's 3 consecutive solid routines on the uneven bars for the Huskers.
Got Mela Lazaro on balance beam for Oregon State. Again, took that little spill there earlier. And then Sabria Rouse for the Terrapins in front of us on the floor.
See Peterman's score coming in at 9-8. Still a long way to go, but Maryland some catching up to do if they want to be very competitive with regard to that second spot. Great finish by Rouse.
I'm going to say she's happy with that routine.
She seems to be very excited about it herself. Goes through the motions to wrap it up and runs back to her corral of teammates.
Some people out of breath at the end of their routine. Most people out of breath. She seems to be doing all right.
Stuck that final landing and seemed to have been re-energized. She could have done it twice through.
Add a couple more tumbling passes. Put another minute in there. Got Sabria Gill getting some last-minute pointers before her turn on the beam. And again, one fall on the balance beam is not going to hurt this Oregon State team, but they can't have any more, is really what it comes down to.
No falls yet for Nebraska on the uneven bars, though with their first 3 performances, they could certainly afford one and still come out in pretty good shape.
This is Taylor Huchin finishing up, and just absolutely beautiful. Nice full pirouette into a double back. It kind of floated.
It was very graceful.
It was.
For sure. Houchin, a very nice performance. The others had been solid up to that point. As you saw, Epperson a 9-8. That's probably the best score so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that routine was absolutely phenomenal out of Taylor. And again, so we've got Sabria Gill for the Beavers on the left side of your screen there. And then for Maryland on floor, this is Carrie Thomas.
Both of these we've seen in other competitions so far. Thomas's teammate Sabria Rouse, a 9.85, her floor exercise.
And so again, so that's the second fall by an Oregon State gymnast on the balance beam. So definitely unfortunate. It just means they have to count one of those low scores. Not exactly how they wanted to come in. So again, ranked 14th overall in the country. They really had a great opportunity to be able to come in and make a really good run for this second place spot to make it to the NCAA national semifinal. Not sure if they're going to be able to do that now.
It's tough to see as Oregon State has had a tough go of it.
So we've got one more Husker on the uneven bar, Sienna Kraus, really needing a good routine.
I did misspeak earlier when I said that they could afford a fall. Danielle Breen led things off for them on the uneven bars and fell.
We actually didn't see it on the screen.
No, you did not, but that did occur earlier, so they can't. The margin for error, not quite what I was implying, but Kraus making that pretty null and void. It's
okay, yeah, because now they don't have to count Breen's score because Sienna just pulled them back in. And again, as long as they can get that 48.8, 197 plus, they may have just had their season high team total?
They could have, as
we'll have to find out.
We await Destiny Davis next up on the balance beam for Oregon State, the sophomore.
So Nebraska will watch that team score jump pretty significantly because right now they are counting a pretty low score. And if that's the case, I'm just going to go ahead and say that they're going to be traveling to St. Louis here in a couple of weeks for the national semifinal.
They're well in line to be in those top 2 performances of the day.
This is Alicia Farina on floor that you hear in the background, and like you mentioned, Destiny Davis for Oregon State on the balance beam.
Interesting method of getting herself up onto the beam.
So a 9-9 out of Kraus on the uneven bars, and that's a team best.
It is.
For
It
Nebraska.
pushes it up nearly an entire point, as you said, predicting with the low score incorporated before. It's a 197.525.
And I believe, even though we don't have LSU score under here, that's only about a 10th difference.
Right, so they are well within contention and possibly putting themselves in position to win the day.
So a phenomenal job by Nebraska as we wait for Oregon State and Maryland to wrap up on their respective events. Nebraska, again, not going down without a fight, coming in as the 11th ranked team, but as you can see, they're just as well equipped and talented as those LSU Tigers, coming in ranked 2nd in the country.
It's such a confidence boost for a team like that, already with plenty to be proud of in a season where you're the 11th ranked team in the country. But when you can compete score for score with a top 2 team heading into potentially a national semifinal, that's a lot of momentum you're taking with you.
Yeah, they're definitely going to take this, take it back, practice, and then they'll head to St. Louis.
And it is .15 behind the score of LSU at the end of the day. So it does seem as if that will be the case. LSU and Nebraska come out of this regional and will advance to the national semifinals. And what was the best team score for Nebraska since 2013, actually. The Big Ten championship, that was March 23rd of that year. They had a 197.8, so
that's huge for these Huskers.
that is a big, big statement by the program. You see Dee Bro and Dan Kindig exchanging a hug. 2 of the best in the business at what they do, for sure.
And those are going to be your 2 teams at the NCAA national semifinals, vying for a spot in the Super 6, seeing who can go on.
So those 2 will compete in St. Louis a couple of weeks from now.
So we've still got some competitors out there. Marielle Ardrino for Towson on the balance beam, one of the all-around specialists. And this is Audrey Barber on floor for Maryland. Speaking of Big Ten, so Nebraska in the Big Ten, actually the Maryland coach this year was named Big Ten Coach of the Year, so Brett Nelligan in his 9th season.
They've had a great year as former competitors in the Eagle in terms of what their conference was, but moving to the Big Ten as they did in all sports a handful of years ago.
Yes. When I competed, Maryland was an Eagle foe.
This may be not necessarily unfamiliar territory for the Terrapins.
To me, I feel like they'll always be a conference rival because that was my mindset, was
right.
Maryland was a conference rival.
So Barber finishes up her floor exercise.
And then we've got the last and final competitor. So again, it comes down to the floor exercise. A lone competitor This, I believe, will be Michaela Robinson.
She representing North Carolina, as the Tar Heels brought a handful of gymnasts to compete individually today.
And again, it's just because they were right on that cusp of making it to regionals as a team. Ended up just outside of that top 36, which I know is really tough for them. But next, there's always next year. They've got a great coach. They've got a great team.
Very young team on their hands as well, or plenty of young contributors who could step up a year from now.
And we've mentioned some of the coaches that have a lot of tenure. UNC's head coach, Derek Galvin, I believe in his 38th or 39th season, so just a couple of years behind Dee Dee Burrow. So we are in for a treat here on floor. Just a great way to finish out the competition. So again, Nebraska and LSU are going to be your two teams moving on. That's pretty clear, as they're the only two teams that have scored over a 197. But there are some individual all-around finalists that will be moving into this NCAA competition as individuals. So again, they don't have to win anything. They have to be the top two all-arounders that don't compete for Nebraska or LSU. So it could be somebody from UNC, it could be somebody from NC State, it could be somebody from Oregon State. It's just going to depend on how those all-around scores fall. And unfortunately, it's hard to keep up with team totals and individual scores. So this is Michaela Robinson out of UNC. And just like the NC State Wolfpack was cheering for the Tar Heels, you've got the entire Maryland team cheering for the Tar Heels.
And for Robinson, in this particular scenario, she hasn't competed in anything else today.
No.
So she came here for this entirety of this meet, and finally it's her turn, and it turns out she's the last competitor to do anything.
It is. She came as an event specialist on the floor exercise. So again, she warmed up floor 3 hours ago, something like that. She had a 4-minute touch with 6 other girls. 4 minutes out of that 3 hours that she's been on the floor, and now we expect her to go out and perform at her best. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. And so far, so good, though, as Robinson goes into her final pass. Sticks it, as I saw you knock on wood across from me. I swear, I'm not trying to jinx anyone.
The last time I didn't knock on wood, there were way too many falls.
A nice performance for Michaela Robinson, as it was much anticipated in her mind anyway. She was around for 3 hours before getting to compete here at the Raleigh Regionals.
So there you can see kind of the 4 teams that were vying for that second place spot, or technically the 5. A little bit unique in the way that they panned out, because it didn't pan out in ranking order. So NC State, I believe, came in 3rd. Again, we'll have to wait for the official scores. George Washington actually, I think Maryland's going to be in the 4th place spot. George Washington, I think, will end up in 5th. And then Oregon State, I think, will actually end up in the 6th place spot.
So as of right now, the scores that are turned in.
And these are not official.
Not official at all, but 197.675 is LSU. That puts them in 1st. 197.525 would put Nebraska in 2nd. And then is when it gets a little bit squirrely, because we don't have final scores in completely. For North Carolina State, there you see it now. Just over a 196 will put them in 3rd. And then Maryland, you're right, grabs just by a fraction of a point. Grabs that 4th spot from George Washington, and Oregon State rounds things out. But the Beavers really had a rough go in a couple of events in particular. The balance beam, they had those couple of falls, which takes a huge hit on your score. So an unfortunate day for Oregon State, but what a great way to finish up the season that we've had personally here up at Reynolds Coliseum, selling the place out, hosting a regional, and seeing a lot of great gymnastics.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really excited to see who those 2 all-around competitors are that are not that are going to be invited to the national competition. Just again, a great way to finish out your season. Even if you don't have your team behind you, as you can see in gymnastics, whoever's team you're placed with, you're going to have a great group cheering you on. So that'll be awesome to see. But again, LSU and Nebraska are your two teams moving on to the NCAA semifinals.
So there you have it, your final scores in for Rachel Garland. I'm Darren Vaught, where it was the Raleigh Regionals of the NCAA Women's Gymnastic Championships here at Reynolds Coliseum. A sellout crowd, a lot of fun in Raleigh. This has been a production of ESPN 3. Stay with us because we will have the awards announcements still to air, but for Rachel and I, we are done. Thanks so much for tuning in.
George Washington University. Tri-Administrators of the Year, Adina Stock from North Carolina State University, John Talquist from Towson University. From the Central Region, Assistant Coaches of the Year, Jay Clark and Bob Moore from LSU. Gymnast of the Year, Sarah Finnegan from LSU. Administrator of the Year, Mark Ewing from LSU. Let's give a round of applause for all of the NACGC/W Regional Award winners with us this evening. Thank you and congratulations to you all. Part of a qualifying team or an all-around qualifier. First, we're going to begin with the vault. Our top three in the vault with a score of 9.95 from Nebraska, Taylor Huchin. From LSU, Maya Hambrick. And from LSU, Kennedy Edney. Next for the parallel bars, the uneven parallel bars. With a score of 9.925 in third place from LSU, Sarah Finnegan. With a score of 9.95 from LSU in second, Lexi Preisman. With a score of 9.975 from Nebraska, Taylor Houchin. Next for the balance beam, All right. With a score of 9.9 from Nebraska, Grace Williams. With a score of 9.9 from Nebraska, Danielle Breen. Also with a 9.9 from LSU, Sarah Finnegan. Another 9.9 from LSU, Kennedy Edney. Another 9.9 from LSU, Christina Desiderio. And in first place with a 9.925 from LSU, Maya Hambrick. Next we have the floor exercise. In third place with a 9.9, we have from Oregon State, Caitlin Yanish. Also with a 9.9 from Nebraska, Megan Schweffer. Next with a 9.9 from LSU, Maya Hambrick. In second with a 9.925 from Nebraska, Sienna Kraus. And in first place with a 9.95 from LSU, Sarah Finnegan. Congratulations to all of our individual event winners. Now it's time to announce your top 6 all-around competitors at today's competition. As a reminder, the top 2 all-around finishers from non-advancing teams will receive an automatic berth to the national championships. All right, here we go. With a score in 6th place, with a score of 39.325 from UNC, Morgan Lane. Also, with a 39.325 from Nebraska, Kinsey Roby. With a score of 39.35 in 5th place from Nebraska, Abby Epperson. With a score of 39.425 from Nebraska, Megan Schweihofer. In 3rd place with a score of 39.525 from LSU, Kennedy Edney. Of a 2-way tie for 1st with a score of 39.625 from LSU, Maya Hambrick. Also with a 39.625, Sarah Finnegan from LSU. Tonight's all-around qualifiers. From George Washington, Camille Druin-Allaire. And also from North Carolina, tonight's qualifier, Morgan Lane from North Carolina. We would like to recognize the teams who will be moving on to the national championships on April 20th and 21st in St. Louis, Missouri. Congratulations to Nebraska and LSU on making it to the national championship. Good luck at the national championships in St. Louis. Congratulations to all of our teams and individuals who competed in today's regionals. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in St. Louis for the National Collegiate Women's Gymnastics Championship on April 20th and 21st. We hope you enjoyed today's event. Please drive home safely, and good night from Reynolds Coliseum.